I have a perfect radio voice. Well, I don't know about that. It's true, it's a little high-pitched and whiny. Welcome to Oakland. I'm Chad Rutherman.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today we're going to be talking about Bayonetta. Bayonetta was released in 2009 on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and it was developed by Platinum Games and published by Sega. It was, however, incredibly conveniently re-released in 2016 on the Wii U. Alongside
earlier than that,
maybe 2015,
2014.
Yeah.
Even.
Wow. Okay, that's a
14
long
or
time.
15.
On the Wii U, and then again, like 3 weeks ago on Steam on PC.
And we actually did not plan that out.
Yeah.
We had picked Bayonetta and been like, I just came out on the PC. How convenient.
Surprisingly, Platinum just seems to be doing this now, which is weird because we didn't know about the PC release of Bayonetta. None of us are really tapped into Platinum Games related news so much.
I'm a little bit.
Okay.
I know Vanquish is coming out for the PC, and I'm happy about that.
And that got announced while I was playing Bayonetta, to the point where when I closed the game, the Steam update window popped up and was like, by the way, Vanquish is coming out. And I bought it immediately, just from things I've heard about it and because it was $15. So anyway, Bayonetta is a... Well, I've been calling this kind of game a hack and slash game, but I guess beat 'em up is almost more if you ignore the arcade context of a Double Dragon or something.
Yeah, I've heard it referred to as a beat 'em up.
Mm-hmm. It's basically these high, I want to say high octane, but that's a dumb word. These fast paced action games that focus a lot on combos, and what a lot of them, thanks to Devil May Cry, which is kind of the progenitor of all of this, referred to as stylish combat. I'm
sorry. I get it under control. I know stylish combat's going to come up multiple times in the episode. I need to...
Well,
that's a trademark of the guy who directed Devil May Cry and Bayonetta.
Yeah,
and it comes from when he used to play in the arcades. He said that you were always he always felt like he wanted to be able to play the game well, but then also make everything he was doing in the game look cool. So if you could play more stylishly,
yeah, and that's something that comes out. I mean, in Devil May Cry, in the original Devil May Cry, and I presume in all of its sequels that I haven't played all of them. Whenever you get the top rank combo, it's always referred to as a stylish combo, so it makes sense. That's the kind. That's just sort of the adjective that they want to be applied to these games. Mm-hmm. Though good work finding the only Hideki Kamiya paraphrase that could be construed as positive in any way.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to in a bit.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I know my own history with these games. Being a big fan of Devil May Cry and actually the remake of Devil May Cry, as well as some other similar type games. I liked God of War for its combat, but I felt like it put in a lot of things that were unnecessary, which is a thing that's going to be a big part of this discussion as well.
Yeah.
But do you guys like these games? Is this the first one you've ever played?
I'm pretty alien to the genre. I have dabbled a little bit in Devil May Cry. I think just the one that you hate, whatever one that was.
DMC4?
Yeah, that one. I remember I rented DMC, just the remake that came out that everyone also hated for unrelated reasons.
Yeah, everybody really hated that game, but I thought it was really good.
Yeah, but I never completed either. Never even poured a lot of time into either. I feel like partially because I never felt like I was truly challenged by the system, certainly not in the way that Bayonetta has, which I think is one of the really positive things about the experience for me. But otherwise, my sister actually tried to sort of hoist Bayonetta onto me a year and a half or more ago. And that was problematic because at the time I could only play it in an apartment where the TV was around other human beings. So it was like a centralized TV apartment that I was not exclusive to. And I just kept looking at the cover out of the box and going like, and then ended up just giving it back to her despite her recommendation. And now realize that I was a stupid person and should have played it at the time because it's really good.
Huh. Andy?
I kind of am the same way. I think I played Devil May Cry for, like an hour or something at a friend's house as a kid, and same thing with God of War. But like I've always been interested in these kinds of games, but have never actually played any of them until Bayonetta.
Yeah, probably really unsurprising to listeners of this podcast, but I feel as though some games with a lot more deliberate combat that I've spent a lot of time with in the past couple of years have sort of spoiled me on this genre, because the decision-making process is such like a different thing than the games that I have been playing that it took me a while to get back into the mindset. But it is just like that sort of very aggressive combat that made me a fan of this genre, I don't know, like 15 years ago at this point, when Devil May Cry itself came out. It's always been such like an underpopulated genre for whatever reason. You rarely see things that are this fast and this, yeah.
I want to pin you on this, though. I'm curious, what you considered like the decision procedures that you're going through when you, someone who's experienced in games of this genre, play them? Like when you're at a moment to moment during gameplay, what sort of things are you thinking about? What are your goals?
Well, I mean, a lot of the things in games like this, at least in the ones that I've played, so the big ones that I've spent a lot of time with, I hesitate to say that I spent a lot of time with Bayonetta doing one playthrough of it, but Devil May Cry DMC and the same thing applies in Bayonetta, in that your playstyle revolves a lot around your weapon selection. And the way, and DMC, this is one of the reasons I liked DMC so much, was just because you could kind of go seamlessly between weapons. Like by just holding a trigger, it altered whether you're using like your heavy weapon or your light weapon. And in Bayonetta, you kind of have to make a more definitive choice. So a lot of the time, my decision-making process when fighting enemies in this game tends to just be try to hit as many of them as possible. With like I keep things in close quarters and then just, I don't know, finish with heavy attacks, save bosses for the end.
Are you a combo guy? In this game or in previous games of the genre, have you ever like really gotten your hooks into a game like this enough to learn combo trees?
Okay, this is weird, I guess. In DMC, yes. In this game, no, but I could see myself doing it. Weirdly, I never bothered to get good at fighting games, despite the fact that they use the same style of combat tree.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure. Fighting games, I think, are just a little bit too brutal for me, generally. I feel like at this point I need to, based on that statement, offer like an apology immediately to anyone, like people who are fans of Platinum games and people who are fans of Bayonetta, because I am bad at this game. Like I am not like good. And like I played through it on normal. I didn't have like a really hard time with it, but it was I got like getting like stone awards at the end of levels and stuff makes me feel so bad.
I think that's like what's supposed to happen on your first playthrough.
Oh, it absolutely is. And like I recognize it as somebody who's played games in the genre before, because like in Devil May Cry you're gonna end up with a lot of C's and D's at the end of your chapters, and the incentive there is supposed to be to replay the level to get a higher score and like understand it more. And this is due to the podcast and due to other factors that we'll get into, that wasn't a possibility in this game.
Oh yeah, we weren't going to. There was no reality in which in like 2 weeks we were going to dig through and become like combo masters at any game now or in the future that we try.
Yeah, it is going to be like I've given this game just on the outset the benefit of the doubt. I cast a wide net on things that I think this could be better, but possibly if I was just better at it, it wouldn't feel as big of a deal.
I think the game does a pretty fantastic job at being amazingly entertaining and tense, even at like low skill levels. Like even during my first playthrough, I was surprised at how often I was getting like really intensely like drawn into scenarios and like sweating my ass off as like controllers are making all these clicking noises, despite I'm sure being complete shit at everything that's happening. But it's like in the moment you feel amazing, no matter what the difficulty is, just so long as that difficulty is toned to whatever's your appropriate level of challenge, like whatever's enough to sort of get you in that zone that these games need to really be entertaining. It's only problematic like after a big lull at the end of the level when you get like a stupid fat guy farting in your face in like trophy form.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good balance because it's only like 1 second you have to deal with the game telling you your shit, and then the rest of the time you still feel as amazing as the mechanics want you to feel.
I'm here. Did anyone not play this on normal?
I literally switched down to easy for one level because I was worried that I wasn't going to get it done in time for the cast, and then went, no, I'm not. This is disappointing. Went back to normal, and is why I am like an hour and a half late.
Yeah. I'm actually curious because you went to easy. I know that easy has a thing that's called like automatic mode.
Oh yeah, I was going to wonder what that actually meant.
Yeah, I don't. I've heard that it's like it's related to the combos. Like it will automatically complete combos or something for you. I don't really remember.
Interesting.
Or no.
I did notice that not only were things that the enemies were doing and the enemies that were spawning was different during that one normal level, but the things that I was doing did change. I didn't dig into that, especially because it was just one chapter.
Yeah.
But I did notice that, like, I'm firing bullets at times when I'm not pressing any sort of the bullet buttons or the chains. I'm doing a whole lot more of the, like, Wicked Weave finishers than I intentionally tried. So presumably that's the automated systems that you're talking about. And if so, that's also cool.
It's a really good way to do difficulties.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, I think that... I mean, I imagine that if you're, like, a seasoned game player, that it would feel patronizing to you. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're, like... If you just could... Like, this game just wasn't for you, and you couldn't play it on normal, and so you toned it down to easy, you would probably feel a little bit, like, all right, game. Like, you don't have to, like, display how good I could be to me with this system.
Yeah, that's why I switched it back to normal pretty much instantaneously, just as soon as I was done with the level, because I realized that I wasn't sort of getting into that same, like, tense moments and zones, because everything that I was doing was ending in, like, knocking people to the ground and, like, ragdolling them around. Yeah. And it started to feel less like whatever the game Bayonetta was trying to be, and more like Dynasty Warriors. It was just way more engaging when I manned up and played the game that it was meant to be played.
Right. I know that some people would argue that the way that this game is meant to be played is on hard. And Platinum does this, I want to say, pretty frequently with their games, in that they made it so that you have to beat the game on normal to unlock hard mode, because they treat normal difficulty as if it was a, like, tutorial for the real game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a thing that we're not going to be able to breach, but I have to give credit where it's due, because it's a game that encourages you to learn the game, like the systems and how everything works, and through the medal system practice it to the point where you're actually good at what it's asking you to do.
Mm-hmm. And it incentivizes that too, like with the trophies and everything. Like, they want you to play this game more than once. Mm-hmm. And they really want you to know how it works.
When I first heard about that, because I've dabbled in Platinum games before, I've actually played, like, Vanquish, I think, at one point, and maybe other things that I don't even remember whether or not they were Platinum games, but I've dabbled, and I know about that stereotype for them. And I remember before I really started to dig in, especially to this game, I thought that, like, a little voice in the back of my head was saying that might be, like, a bad design choice. Like, it seems, like, somewhat lazy of them instead of to build it into, like, a full difficulty curve out within one playthrough that really moves with you and moves with the pace of the story to just allow things to reset and move up the difficulty. But playing this game has actually changed my mind about that. And it's specifically because the amount of complexity in the systems at some point when you're trying to make an action game like this, where you have so many decision points about what you can just physically do at any given time, that's you just got to accept that people aren't going to be able to learn that in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
And certainly, and you can tell from the way that this game was made, that they couldn't make this game if it was 40 or 50 hours long with the budget that they had. So,
you can tell even in the base game where there were a few corners that got cut.
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You fight in that same plaza like area, I think 4 times.
Yeah, like where like you first run into Luca in the story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty
Yeah, at least 4.
pretty obvious. Yeah.
The really like economic use of cutscenes there, which by the way I support. As funny as it is, and we're poking fun at like, haha, we can tell that you didn't have enough money to actually animate this.
Yeah, but then, they still had more money than we do.
Oh yeah. So it was a great decision given their financial limitations about how to deal with cutscenes like this. And frankly, I think it's way preferable to either having like no cutscenes, no animation, or bad animation in place of anything else. Because this game relies like so heavily on animation quality and like the quality of character movements to sell like particularly what the protagonist is and what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a thing where because like Bayonetta herself is so small on screen most of the time that they have to really exaggerate. I would like to credit this for the reason why Bayonetta has legs that are 3 miles high. It may or may not actually be the reason, but because of her like very lanky figure, it makes it very obvious what she's doing at any given time. So it definitely helps with that kind of selling it with that animation.
Yeah, the animation in this game is pretty fantastic.
You can tell they even reused it. Like, not just did they reuse set pieces and levels, they reused her animations all the time. When you're, like, walking in and out of the gates of hell, that's just her, like, standard walk animation that she's going through there.
Yeah. I remember seeing those cutscenes for the first time and thought that it was a stylistic choice because they had done a fully animated, like, pre-rendered cutscene a minute before. But then that became the norm, and it kind of became more clear to me that even if it's a little jarring the first time you see the like their wind physics but that's it cutscenes, that was like it was a choice that was made due to a limitation, and they made the best of it.
Yeah, I actually found it kind of charming. Like, one thing that I really liked about this game is that it felt like playing like a last generation game. Like, and then like I just haven't played too many of those recently. Like, it just felt something about playing an older game felt good to me.
Yeah. The way that, like, it's discrete levels with a shop in between them without any sort of, like, narrative conceit for why that shop is happening, and you're just buying power-ups and finding stuff.
Yeah, it was very
very
video gamey.
And also, I mean, that's straight out of Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I could point to that come, like, from the first Devil May Cry, just ported directly into Bayonetta.
Yeah, and the texturing felt, I thought, a lot like the textures in like Resident Evil 4.
Yeah. There are definitely some elements of that as well.
Yeah, there was like a weird familiarity to that also felt good.
Yeah. That's man, there's a lot to get into here. I gotta say though, based on your discussions and despite myself saying that I give this game a lot of the benefit of the doubt in areas that I didn't find it to be super, like, polished.
Yeah.
I actually am not real high on this game as a whole. And I think that based on, because I've played Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, and
played an hour of that too. That's another Platinum game I forgot about.
And I've played about an hour and a half of Nier Automata, and I get the feeling based on these 3 games and the distance that they're spaced apart, I have to imagine that Bayonetta 2 is probably like just a great action game. Because I think that with any additional polish, this game could really take a step up from being sort of like a run-of-the-mill action Devil May Cry style hack and slash game to something that is actually just really compelling.
Are you talking about mechanical polish or sort of like ancillary polish, like the sort of cutting corners we've been talking about, or even just story things?
Purely mechanical polish. There are a lot of things in this game that I felt like that you can even draw direct correlations to this year's Nier. Last year's Nier? I forget if
I think that came out this year.
Yeah, it was in March.
Yeah.
I remember we were commenting on this. The biggest example, the one that I found to be like the absolute low point of the game, has a direct corollary in Nier, and the thing that I want to bring is the motorcycle segment.
Yeah,
is just a trash fire. Like, I have no idea how that made it into, like, they wanted her to have a sequence where she's on a bike.
Yes.
And they were like, anything you do where she's on a bike is fine by us, and we'll put it in the game. The animation is bad, the physics are bad, it looks bad. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It is insanely easy, except for a, like, 30-second span of time where everything kills you in one hit when you're driving into the opposite lane. But even then, the checkpoint's only, like, maybe a minute back from that.
Yeah.
So it's almost just like an apology. Like,
the environment loops. Like, there's so many.
The enemies are totally inconsequential. Like, they might as well not be there. And, like, it's just such, like, a dumb, stupid thing in this game. And then you look at within the tutorial of Nier, you do, like, a shoot 'em up section and a bullet hell section. There's, like, it's a shoot 'em up, both a side scroller and, like, a top down Galaga style, and then a mech combat section, all of which play way better. And the mech, I think, is the direct, like, comparison here, because it's like a behind the back, you're going forward and fighting enemies thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like they clearly got better at that style of thing between 2009 and 2016, as you would expect. And things like that sort of brought the game down for me.
I have to agree. I mean, about those specific points. Pretty much any time I wasn't either fighting people my size on foot or something giant-sized on foot, I felt like the game was just wasting my time a little bit. It was so great when you were actually playing the mechanics that the game was designed around and marketed around. But, like, I don't care about, like, the Angel Bullet game or whatever that was.
Oh yeah, Angel Attack.
Yeah.
I agree. Those sections were weird, and I didn't know if I was doing them right, and, like, stuff like that. But, like, I did once again just totally bought into this game, all, like, flaws and all. Like, I was enjoying that part, even though, like, it was easy. And I didn't know really what was going on mechanically at all.
Yeah, well, I feel like they made it easy to compensate for the fact that...
I was like, yeah, on a motorcycle.
They made it easy to compensate for the fact that it's a little broken, but it also adds to that, I guess, like, the power fantasy aspect of it, because, like, you are just, like, sliding under a tractor trailer on a motorcycle, and you're like, oh, I'm so awesome! Mm-hmm. Even if, like, what you're doing is, like, you're literally holding one button. And not doing anything else.
I had the same sense in which I often tried to give the benefit of the doubt in these segments. I just thought that the motorcycle one in particular was kind of bad because of how long it lasted. It's that and the aerial missile fight.
Yeah, the weird missile.
The missile fight, I thought, conversely, I had a good time with. Like, I don't think it was as good as just playing the base Bayonetta video game.
Yeah.
But I thought that in terms of the, like, rapid fire schizophrenic differences in kind that this game, like, wants to do, it was the best one.
I thought it was still a little bit too long. Also, I feel like I'm a little bit spoiled by Star Fox 64.
Yeah, any like shooter game at all. Yeah.
I remember there was a period of time at, like, the final boss of that sequence where I felt like I was getting actual motion sickness because I couldn't figure out how, if they're, like, I assume you can't both dodge and fire bullets, so I just kept dodging and dodging on the missile segment.
There's a bunch of camera movement too.
The dodge was a little bit like and that even brings me up to the final boss of the game. At the end of the okay, this is, I guess, a lie. Spoiler, the not final boss, portrayed as final boss of the game, ends with a totally new steering a bullet, like around some shards of glass.
Dude, that was a great example of the kind of bullshit they try to do with all these games. That was the one that I thought worked, because it lasted like 20 seconds. You didn't need anything explained. There was no tutorial.
It took you just long enough to realize what was happening.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, okay.
Well, because I've seen that shot before. Like, that, like, thing happens a weird amount. Like, I can point to examples in, like, Kill Bill, during the anime section, and in Wanted does this like every 8 seconds, where they just like stick the camera onto a bullet and shoot it, and you're like, it's like on the bullet. And so I just thought it was a cutscene, and then like it got to the pane of glass, and it just went right through it. So I don't actually know if there's a way to fail that, but I then realized that I was supposed to be doing something and proceeded to steer it into the guy's dumb face. But it's so weird. And I guess kind of tutorializes the part where you have to punch the actual final boss into the sun, which is equally easy and goofy, but I think in that instance pulled it off and made it really, really good. Whereas the previous one was like unexpected, didn't make a whole lot of sense, and was like confusing just from the outset, at least for me. So I mean, I give it a pass, but like you said, it's 20 seconds. Like, I'm not going to complain about 20 seconds unless it's me running the Nightmare Headstone.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So...
Did either of you guys fail the throwing into the sun minigame at the end there?
No,
you
please.
Can fail that?
If you hit a planet, I thought, okay, when that minigame started...
let me just destroy all the planets here.
Yeah, when that game started...
You go full on, like, Meteor, like Sephiroth, like, you had to destroy all the planets on the way to the sun.
Yeah, that's what I thought was the, like, most extreme end to how this was going to go. I thought it was,
I agree.
You run through every planet until it hits the sun. I never made the connection that one of those planets was Earth, because I hit, like, Uranus and then got the fail. Well, the fail's pretty great, too.
Well, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, because the planet, whatever planet you hit, explodes. I asked you guys because I was hoping one of you two had the balls to throw it into Earth or something else.
I considered it, but after that boss fight being like... That boss fight was so long, I got up to take a leak in the middle of it and came back to finish the boss.
You see.
So,
but yeah, when you hit the planet, it like does the explosion animation, and I was really concerned at first because they make a big deal of the explosion. So I thought like, oh no, I got the shitty one now. I didn't throw it into the sun, which is clearly the cool one. I just threw her into Uranus, which is the lame one. But then it turns out
she's funnier about it.
Yeah.
It turns out she survives and has this like god, which is previously like uncharacterized through the whole fight, has this weird like suggestive smirk and then just like a jump off back toward the camera to you, and then you get the game over. So it was a weird moment of characterization for the god antagonist.
Right.
But yeah, otherwise that's what happens when you fail that sequence.
I'm really glad that they didn't... that what they did was just give you a game over. Because do you remember the boss... it's one of the bosses that has like the whole chapter dedicated to it, where it's like it's like a boatman.
Oh yeah, boatman.
Yeah, boatman.
Boat shark.
So when you're fighting the boatman, if you fail one of the QuickTime events while trying to steer him into the
Spider?
demon, yeah, you just pop back. And, like, you hit one of the faces a couple of times. So it's like a super easy version of the original challenge. And then you retry the QuickTime event.
Yeah.
It would be so stupid if you threw God into Uranus. And then it, like, goes, jumps back. And then you have to, like, break one of its hair tendrils and then, like, activate the climax again. That would have been, like, the most... I guess pardon the play on words, anticlimactic climax in the whole game.
Yeah.
God, it was so lame when I just blew up this planet instead of actually finishing the game.
Yeah, then canonically, any planets you destroyed on the way there would actually be destroyed in the Bayonetta universe.
Well, the moon's already gone, so this game doesn't really seem to care about, celestial body permanent destruction and the implications of those things.
Yeah. As far as... Because I was feeling... moderately negative, like hovering around average on this game during a lot of the end. Brought down pretty significantly by the 25-minute long cutscene before the Chapter 16 boss. Up until then, and at a point there, I really should have just skipped the cutscene because I stopped paying attention after a few minutes.
That sounds like skip time, yeah.
Yeah. But that final boss as a whole brought the game way up. Like, I thought that the actual, epilogue boss was just, was the exact, level of outlandish camp that this game should be going for at every minute of its playtime.
Yes. Yeah. The presentation of that whole final sequence I thought was really wonderful and pretty. I said, it's not my favorite moment of the game, but that's just because I like the one-on-one fights so much more comparatively. The fights with your red sister and
Jean.
Particularly those two
fire and lightning guys
who always show up in pairs. Yeah. They were always super engaging because I always felt like I was being tested to the max of my ability. I never had a pause moment in the way that you always can against other bosses where you're anticipating them and their charge ups are so long. I like this game when the things that you are facing are also at their most frantic and forcing you to just dodge all over the place and do all that fun stuff. The big guys were cool for a spectacle, and they did a good job of avoiding a lot of the pitfalls with huge monster enemies that often happen in video games. I think the only big creature that I didn't like fighting was that sky snake, where I feel like they allowed themselves to make some of those mistakes where you're just most of the time you're sitting around waiting for it to do a thing while you just aim a gun at it and walk sexily in a circle.
I'm actually amazed at how different our opinions on this are.
Actually, while I was playing, I was like, these Jean fights are exactly the kind of thing JJ loves.
Yep.
And I'm like, these monster fights are exactly the kind of thing that Chad loves.
Why do you think I love the Jean fights?
That was perfectly well characterized, I think.
Well, because I feel like we've had this conversation before where it's your favorite kind of bosses in games are ones that are have similar skill sets to you.
Yeah, they're duels.
Yep.
Yeah. Which, in my experience...
And I lean more towards JJ's side. I liked the duel kind of fights better.
Yeah, I think that is very true in Dark Souls. I think that in Bayonetta, the duels come off as not good. Because I also think that the big monsters were handled really well, with the exception of the cherubs or whatever they're called, the giant guys with the axes with the weak point on their back, because they're just sort of and they're a really frequently recurring enemy, and it was always a downer when they showed up because there's nothing particularly interesting about them.
Yeah.
They never put them in an area where you can't avoid them while you kill everyone else, so it's always just they swing an axe, you activate Witch Time, you attack them for a while.
Yeah.
And then, they're more challenging before you unlock Air Dodge, but if you're a thinking man, you unlock Air Dodge immediately.
Yeah.
And never look back. But I thought the duels were... The Jean duels specifically were a point of contention for me. I never felt like I was beating them by any sort of strategy. It was always just sheer force of will as I just mashed the Y button over and over again to start a combo so long that she would just stop dodging and get stabbed, and then otherwise I was just avoiding things which inconsistently would or would not activate Witch Time, and it was, I don't know, they were more frustrating than anything else.
You gotta play along with their games, man. You can't, if you try and brute force it and just punch and go straight through her, you never have the fun of that sort of weird sequential dance that is the best thing about most duels in all games, where you're just all dodging around, selectively getting in 2 hits and running away from each other.
They ruin, because anytime there's an actual moment where it's the two of you are on equal footing, they put a Mario Party-ass QuickTime event where you have to hammer the Y button.
Well, that only happens when you both use the same attack at the same time.
I never picked up. She must have spammed the light attack button for me.
Witch Time activates when you dodge one of her Wicked Weaves.
Yep.
And when she does her final sword slash, when she does a sword combo.
Okay.
I'm glad that, I imagine we both picked up on the mutual hit QuickTime event trigger thing, because it was critical to beating one of the final bosses in Birth by Sleep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That was the only reason I ended up like remembering that at all.
Yeah. I fortunately had lots of Mario Party experience, so I knew that the correct thing to do is any time that a QuickTime event would come up, to put the controller on my knee and then use my index finger to just hammer the button as fast as I could. So, like, nearly every one of my climaxes in this game were, like, max bonus. So that was a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like the one-on-one duels. I think the giant monsters are really good, though. I think the bosses are done incredibly well because they're meant to be a spectacle and not to be a significant challenge. Meanwhile, those Druga enemies are supposed to be a challenge and I think work really well. Except for the one instance in which they just randomly made them not let you activate Witch Time, which is never explained to you.
Oh, yeah.
And so when that's like how you play this game, it becomes incredibly hard to deal with them.
It does. I remember, I think it's like the gold plating, I think might be like the weird universal symbol they never tutorialized.
Immediately after that fight, you fight two big cherub guys who are gold, and that you can activate Witch Time on them. And in fact, you then fight two gold snakes who you can't damage unless you're in Witch Time.
Yeah.
So it's not that, but it is those gold ones.
Yeah.
Because they show up twice ever.
Yeah, that's something the game doesn't do very well, and because it's so fast-paced, you never, like, take the time to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, for all I know,
You're
there could be
just
enemies.
those two enemies, I couldn't do Witch Time on them.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Especially
This
since
thing now.
it's a skill-based thing. So at least the first couple of times you think that you've just missed the trigger.
Yeah.
And that could end up with you getting pummeled in the face. But I agree, it is because it's fast-paced. Like, you could be like, oh, well, if the enemy has a mustache, then you can't activate Witch Time.
Yeah, it's like, I might
I'm not gonna
never fight
notice
this
that.
enemy again in the rest of the game. I don't know if I need to worry about this.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite big guy boss?
Favorite big guy boss? My favorite big guy boss to fight in terms of how it, like, looked and felt was probably the tentacle guy, who you would, like, dodge out of the way and then run up the tentacle and cut it off.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool, though I think my favorite actual boss fight was the first big boss, the one that is in, like, the Colosseum.
Dragon face?
Yeah.
Dragon Face.
Yeah.
Because the Dragon Face mini-bosses are, like, some of the worst parts of the game. Like, where, like, the Cathedral one in particular is really irritating, because, like, it just, like, the whole first part of the fight is you just running left and right over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you fight the full man, the full dragon man, maybe he was just a dragon, it was that was actually really enjoyable.
I agree. It was, if I remember right, it was the first like real spectacle boss that they throw at you. That's like a full ordained fight.
Yeah,
so
it's its
everything
entire chapter.
that was happening was constantly surprising. Like even like the silly Mario Party QuickTime events that have since gone out of vogue. Always, I never knew when they were coming, and I didn't have expectations about what sort of things at those fights would cause me to have to do stuff like that. So it was always, every cutscene that triggered for a few seconds was a surprise. It just really felt cool the whole time, and it was also one of the first challenge spikes where I had to retry it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, and the QuickTime event that you get there is just like ripping the dragons off its face. So.
It's super hardcore.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, in defense of the QuickTime events in this game, hopefully we'll eventually play a game where I can't defend the QuickTime events, and we can just flatly say that they're bad. I think that there's actually a physiological reason for them being in this game, because I think they want you to always just be tensed up.
Yeah.
Like, physically, like, your muscles should be tense in order to facilitate, like, a fast reaction time. And those keep, because you have to mash the button, keep you, like, actually doing something, and doesn't allow you to, like, rest and let the blood flow back.
Yeah, it's like, I think that this game probably implements QuickTime events the best out of any game I've ever played, personally. I still think QuickTime events suck.
Yeah.
But, because, like, if you failed one, you could immediately retry it.
Yeah.
Like, the iteration time is really good. And they have, like, that God of War thing going for them, where, like, what's happening on screen and the action of mashing the button just like go together pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, the previous game that we talked about with Resident Evil 4, like, there's nothing exciting or intense about pulling yourself up onto a ledge, but you have to, like, hammer the X button to get up.
Yeah, and if you, like, missed one on that minecart thing, you had to do the whole thing again.
Yeah, meanwhile in Bayonetta, you're just like, oops, let's right back into it. Bring out the demon fists.
Pretty sweet fists.
Yeah. I'm curious if you guys settled on, like, a weapon that you liked a lot, or if you switched out for different situations. Or if you just didn't unlock any of the weapons.
I mean, I unlocked a few of them. I realized now in retrospect I must have missed many pieces of LPs. Because I realized that I have a couple of, like, segments that never got completed.
Yeah, they're all contained, like, within a level. So there are several that I didn't get either. I don't know what they are exactly.
But I think all I got were the katanas, the elemental claws, and the shotgun. And I remember trying out it because I got them roughly at the same time. The shotgun and the katana, and felt like I was no longer playing Bayonetta, and then switched back. I know this is a really stupid thing to have. Like, obviously, you're still playing the game. They put those mechanics there intentionally, but, like, I can play so many fucking games where I'm a guy with a sword who does this shit. But I really liked a lot of the ways that they sort of bled bullets into all the activities that you went into in Bayonetta, specifically streams of bullets, and switching either the katana or switching one of the regular handguns for shotguns made me feel like that uniqueness that it was bringing to the table was being detracted from. I had so much fun feeling like even if I missed a punch, I could just hold it down now and instead, like, auto hit with a million bullets.
Yeah.
It was a really good mechanic that I loved.
I was the exact same way. Like, I tried the katana and the claws, I think, and was like, this feels like ass in comparison to the guns. And I just used the guns the whole time.
Oh, you've seen me play a little bit of this game.
Yeah, I was surprised you were using the katana, because that was, like, by far my least favorite weapon.
The katana was the only weapon that I felt like really... Like, I felt more comfortable with the katana than I did with her, like, default fists. And a lot of the reason for that is because it's a weapon that allows you to kind of always be doing something, which I guess is kind of a stupid thing, considering you can always be, like, shooting guns and whatever. But if there's an enemy that's, like, a distance away, the katana has this... Okay, it's broken. It's just cheesy and broken. Charge attack, where if you hold it, you, like, build up a charge, and then if you hold it for, like, an abysmally long time, you, like, deepen your stance, and it makes, like, a shing noise, and then, like, you will just cleave dudes in half, and it's a huge area. So you can just, like, clear an entire room with one attack. And it's a little bit ridiculous, but for the most part, I just liked the range and the fact that it had lots of, like, very long-reaching forward attacks. Plus, when you're fighting a boss, you get a cool, like, spirit sword. Like, that's, like, an extension of the sword itself.
That would look cool.
So that's pretty rad.
That does solve one thing that I was looking for consistently through most of the game, which is, despite buying a lot of different techniques, I never felt like I had the, like, long-range engagement move that I was hoping for, and then that became moot after I got the turned into the runny dog.
Oh yeah, the panther.
And I used it as sort of like a substitute. It wasn't obviously an aggressive substitute, but it was. I could now always be in melee.
Chain that into attacks.
I know.
The thing that you're actually looking for is another weapon that's a whip. And it has, like, a crazy long range, but does, like, very little damage. I experimented it for a while, both on hands and feet, and it didn't seem to do much. Either way. The thing that I kind of settled on was I had katana in the top hand, in the hands, plural.
And your top hand.
Your top hand. And then in the foot slot, I used the elemental claws. I didn't... Mostly just because they did lots of damage and your kicks are kind of slow anyway. They have a charge attack that, like, leaves a bomb. And then if somebody, like, blunders into it somehow, it explodes and deals damage. But it's so slow and it's just not practical. But then on my alternate, I use sword and shotguns.
Yeah, I liked the ability to just, like, always be firing the gun.
Right.
Like, I guess it made me always feel like I was in control when I'm like just all like constantly like doing damage. Like when I'm thinking, I can just be like holding Y and having her just like casually shoot shit.
Yeah. I mean, you still have the basic gunshot tech, like the X button when you're using the katana, so that was a thing. I thought this was going to be a slightly meatier discussion, but neither of you liked any of the weapons, so I guess there's really not much to talk about there.
It's not a matter of liked. Like I said, I experimented with them a little bit. Mm-hmm. I just loved the gun systems in place so much more that my experiment short very quickly.
Yeah. I feel like I would have recommended for you to do guns in the hands and then shotguns on the boots, because shotguns on the boots is actually really nice, because if you do like a kick attack that knocks somebody back and then hold the button, there's like a slight delay and then a huge shotgun blast, and it does like a pretty significant chunk of damage. So it doesn't really cut your combo potential short, but it's pretty good.
I'm sure that'll be part of the million other things that Platinum sort of half expects you to experience when you replay the game. Because I don't think anyone is like just on the fly switching between lots of different weapons on their first playthrough.
Right.
I got so attached to the default moveset, I can't imagine that other people wouldn't also get attached to something relatively fast.
Yeah, like I did with the katana.
Yeah.
I think that if I did a second playthrough, which I likely won't, but I will play Bayonetta 2 at some point. Mm-hmm. I know that in Bayonetta 1, and hopefully in the sequel, there is a grenade launcher that I did not unlock.
Ooh.
And I would totally love to have a grenade launcher in this game.
In this game, and lots of different fighting games, I rarely feel like I understand enough to actively choose between combos at a time. Like, I don't feel like I know enough to understand why certain combos are better than others contextually.
Right.
And this is one of the things that mechanically puts me off of fighting games, because there'll be this, like, goddamn enormous list that the game clearly doesn't expect you to know, but it's there anyway, presumably to benefit you somehow.
Right.
It's for the people who are gonna, like, put the time in.
But what do you get for putting the time in is my question.
Oh, you're talking about specifically in the context of Bayonetta, not fighting games.
Oh, yeah.
They do both have that same, like, long-ass list of combos.
Right. And to both, I am, of course, ignorant of how different combos help me at different times. Like, in fighting games, different combos can do completely different things. You can, you can end a combo by firing, a laser out of your eyes or whatever.
Right.
But in Bayonetta, they're all generally just different chains of variously strength and timed melees that end with a weave. So I didn't really understand, in this game and others, why it's beneficial.
It's actually tricky, because on some weapons, your combos won't end with a weave. And so you have to, if you need a weave, you have to, strategically plan how you're going to go into it. Because I think the main difference between this and a fighting game is that a fighting game does expect you to know that list.
Yeah.
Backwards and forwards. Bayonetta, for the average player, I would say doesn't.
You're going to have 3 or 4 go-to combos that you use.
Yep.
Yeah, but I have to imagine that if you did know the list, the benefit that it would give you is, because different combos have different amounts of mobility, where you'll knock somebody further. Some of the most enjoyable combat experiences in this game for me were chains where I would start on the ground, be about to end a combo, and go into the afterburner kick, and then just continue the combo in the air, finishing with a down move or with a combo mid-air or whatever it is. And that kind of a chain is really only possible once you start learning the things that go together and what cancels work. And I think that's that is a mechanical level that I didn't reach, and I feel like most players won't reach.
Of course.
But the people who are very into it, the people who are getting those platinum medals and pure platinum medals on the hardest difficulties of the game, have to know that and have to plan strings so that the combo just never drops. I think that's what it is.
Okay. Chaining makes sense, because chaining would be super rewarding in this game.
Yeah. So you want to take a break?
Yeah!
Do you want to break our combo chain and start a new half of the podcast?
Don't we need to end with a wicked weave of some kind?
No.
What's metaphorically speaking a weave that we could find?
I don't think there's I guess we were weaving a tail.
We're weaving a discussion.
Right.
Maybe.
So we're taking all of our discussion threads and we bring them together
Into this.
into a brick, and then we're going to cut it. Welcome back from the break. Every once in a while, I want to say more often than I would typically be comfortable with, doing a video game podcast makes us come face to face with a topic that I want to say most analytical people are pretty shy about addressing, which, for lack of the desire to use a better term, is tits.
Please continue, Chad. Please.
Yeah. I've done, at this point, probably an embarrassing amount of thinking about this, given how, little the developers seem to give a shit.
But you're in good company among people who have put unbelievable amounts of time into this.
Into thinking about games generally, and in this instance.
Myself included. My notes page is testament to the literal sleepless nights.
It just says boobs a bunch of times in a row in his notes.
It's just a whole bunch of pictures of Bayonetta cosplayers.
Yeah.
This is the level of sophistication and tone you can
That
come
you
to
can
expect from discussion of sexual issues on the No Clip podcast.
Well, that's the thing, is because this game is probably the game that we've played that has made the biggest deal about it. I think this game is the game that most borders on. I think that using the term pornographic is a significant overstatement, given this game.
Agreed.
It borders on tastelessness. It doesn't, though. It full-blown dives into tastelessness. And there's definitely an argument to be made that that's the point.
Yeah. Luckily, most of the games that do that are terrible games, so we never have to talk about them on the podcast. Right. This is a very important and notable exception.
This is no Lollipop Chainsaw.
Yeah.
No Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball 1, 2, or 3.
Jesus, that's a whole nother ballpark.
That's a whole nother volleyball park.
It is.
There are two things that came up earlier that I want to revisit here before we get into this topic. The first one being Andy bringing up a quote from the series creator Hideki
Kamiya.
Yeah, Kamiya. Actually, I wrote his name down so that I didn't forget it. And it was not an objectionable, horrible quote.
Right.
And that's pretty uncommon for him. And then the other one being you saying that you did not play Bayonetta initially because your only television was in a public space. And I think that both of these shine a pretty significant light on what the perceived issue is here. Bayonetta is is a intentionally sexually charged game. And it's pretty evident through the animations, which are so good, as we talked about. Bayonetta's choice of outfits, multiple, if you unlock them throughout the game. And I want to say most damningly their decision to make her entire outfit out of hair. Because at no point does that make any sense whatsoever, except as an excuse for her to be naked.
It's actually based on some kind of European folklore where witches would use their hair to cast spells.
Which is fine, but...
No, I totally agree, but there is an inspiration for it.
Right. Being they use their hair to cast spells works in the context of the game until it becomes also her clothing.
Right.
Which is where you're just couldn't just put on some pants? Is that not an option?
She has golden chains, which is enough.
Golden chains are my wardrobe of choice on every possible occasion.
It's my preferred underwear.
Yeah.
This golden chain.
So, as evidenced by this discussion, I think, seemingly pretty ridiculous, and I think, in this context only, not really harmful. And intentional in the way that, schlock cinema is, grindhouse cinema. I've seen this game on more than one occasion compared to Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, and I think that is actually like a super apt comparison taken on its own with no outside influence.
Yeah, my biggest comparison with this is I think Bayonetta's got like a case of the Harley Quinns. Because it's like the sexuality is so baked into the character, like, you know, they could release an issue of Harley Quinn's standalone comic or whatever where she just prances around the whole thing in her underwear.
Right.
No one would bat an eye. But like, because it seems in character.
Right.
And then, but if people have been like upset about like when they draw Wonder Woman with too much cleavage, and like people made such a fuss about her costume that they gave her pants for a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it's so much a part of the character that like you start to like, once you get to know the character a little, you perceive her doing all those ridiculous sexual things as things she wants to be doing.
Right.
And it kind of melts away. But, you know, like, if somebody were to just walk in and see you playing the game, it does not look like that
it's
at all.
Embarrassing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is embarrassing.
Out of context, this game is and probably will always remain like something that could just be construed as like that pseudo-pornographic appeal that you were talking about. But, and I alluded to it earlier when I was talking about that scenario you brought up where my only TV was in a public space.
Right.
This game, for the most part, actually changed my mind on that perception. I did a lot of looking into this topic, and honestly, out of all the times that I've like looked into various like objectification and like sexism discussions, like in or outside of the philosophical literature, I really think that this game is one of the most like interesting locus points of discussion. Like the kind of things that people talked about around the time the like original Bayonetta came out, about like whether or not this was like positive or negative imagery, the kind of issues that can resolve around creating a fictional character based on having these sort of like sexualized components.
Right.
Like what you were talking about before, Andy, how her character, it seems so, they design her in such a way that it seems normal and consenting for her to behave like that.
You feel like Bayonetta's in charge.
Oh yeah.
Because she is.
Most of the time. I don't think it's universal. And I think part of the distinction between that is whenever Bayonetta is doing these things, you have an in-narrative conceit for the behavior. Like, it's when she is doing, like, the crazy pseudo-stripper stuff in the middle of her, like, ridiculous combos and stops for a snapshot for a second at the end of it with, like, a wink and a nod. It feels like it's something that she is doing, but there are times during a lot of the pre-rendered cutscenes when the camera work will focus around and you no longer have that, like, in-character excuse about what's going on. Like, you get the idea that, like, maybe she wouldn't care one way or the other, of course, but you still no longer have the excuse with the camera work of that it's, like, something that the character having agency of and in personality with that person is doing. Like, it doesn't feel like Bayonetta is doing anything anymore when you have a prolonged crotch shot like that.
It's just male gaze at that point.
Yeah.
Well, the game plays male gaze so hard that you can just imagine, like...
But it's really only in the cutscenes, though. Like, I was going to bring up that same point.
It's in the cutscenes, but if you include in the cutscenes every time that you use, like, a finisher
And
in
I
the
would.
game.
I would.
I mean, that's fair. I think that there's a really hard black bar between the game itself and considering the game anywhere outside of within its own context. I think that once you bring it becomes like a creator versus the work situation that you can bring up when you talk about something that's that like Konami makes with like one of my favorite game developers of all time, Hideo Kojima, where he clearly is kind of a gross dude, but like I like what he makes, and so I choose to sort of blind myself from that aspect of it, which is in itself problematic. But the thing with Bayonetta is it's so much more cut and dry, because reading interviews, Kamiya comes off as a total fucking sleaze.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He just is misogynistic in his behavior, and as soon as you put that on, like that light on it, and you're like, well, Bayonetta is a fictional character, Bayonetta doesn't have choice in what she's doing because Bayonetta is not real. Bayonetta is essentially a personified version of this guy's vision, and it becomes so much worse when you think of it like that. You can choose to look at the work and say Bayonetta is a powerful female character, and I think that that's fine, but the difference, if you find Bayonetta to be disgusting or empowering, is going to come a lot down to personal, like, how it actually makes you feel. I just feel as though I can't make that jump.
Yeah, it is like a messy kind of personal thing, like with artist intent. But like, I'm firmly in the camp that like artist intent doesn't really matter unless you're analyzing it like we are right now.
Right.
There's something also really important to bring up that often came up in these early discussions about what was going on, in which there were a lot of people talking about when Bayonetta first came out that Kamiya was, for the most part, as the director, just like the okay guy. He obviously had a vision, but with any game, there's so many different branches that go off, and he's the one who just grants approval. There's lots of, cookers making this meal here.
Sure.
And one thing that's often pointed out is that the actual original character design for Bayonetta, like the first concept work, was actually done by a woman named Mary Shimazaki.
Yes.
And I started looking into her work a little bit because I was curious if this is a situation, because after I got through the game and while working through it, I felt like there was this tension going on between the people who were wanting to make Bayonetta this like weird, sexualized, empowered character, like this owning exhibitionism thing that generally isn't represented in media at all, let alone in video games. And I was curious if like she was part of the source of this, because her actual like physical design it's interesting to compare it to other things that are normally like hyper-sexualized games, because her outfit, though being skin tight, is not suggestive in the way that it normally is in games like this.
Yeah, it's not female armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't actually show as much skin, and the times when she does are normally like selective cutscene things where I feel like there's other agency issues coming in. She doesn't have as much of a chest as a lot of characters like this. There's no like boob physics going on or anything.
There
of
are
the sort.
boob physics in the game, unfortunately. Yeah, they do, and not only that, the worst offender is the Joy enemy.
Oh, I forgot about Joy.
Yeah, if you use a torture attack on Joy, it like the camera literally just like stays in place as her character model is placed on top of this thing.
I was talking
So
about
it's a horse.
Bayonetta specifically, though, because he's the person that I'm interested in. Because the interesting discussion isn't like whether or not there's sleazy shit in this game. There's sleazy stuff all over this game.
It's
the
sort
Joy being
of-
a great example.
It sort of taints the whole, and as a slight asterisk to what you were saying before, while I agree with it mostly, the Bayonetta's whole thing is sexuality, but it's tinged with BDSM, and that sort of like skin tight leather outfit that isn't necessarily revealing but is suggestive is part of that as its own sort of level of sexualization.
Totally agree. And to complete the thought about her character designer, what was interesting was when I started looking into the other designs that she made, the other things did not in any way fall in line with like the portrayal that you hear people talk about online about like, oh, this is clearly a woman made this is a woman trying to make an empowered woman. The rest of her designs are like generally, as far as I saw, like par for the course sort of like video game, sexualized skins. Lots of mini skirts, lots of the same stuff that we're generally used to in the medium. So I don't think you can use that as a cop-out. But given that, like, I came away from this game thinking that it was like a really good movie made by the shittiest person. Like, I was so surprised how often I ended up like enjoying what was going on a presentational level, how like believable I thought a lot of these like completely ridiculous characters end up being, and how much I was willing to buy into Bayonetta as a person as much as she seemed to be buying into herself, despite the fact that if I ever took a step back, if I ever like allowed myself to get away from this game, I know the real reason that so much of that is there. And that, I think, is a lot of the like pragmatic reasons that we can use to differentiate like sexualization that can be like a neutral or positive force from sexualization that's a negative force. Because I think if you look at a lot of the things that people often complain about, the problem is how that sexualization interacts with who the character is. And that's why we get problems like when people have discussions about that Tracer outfit that got removed recently.
It was a
or not outfit.
victory pose.
The pose.
Yeah.
Where the problem isn't necessarily like specific sexualized content. The problem is how the context around that content makes it like believable or not for the person. It's so often it's so clear whenever in games like this when these moments come up that this is only here so that like men can get like a little blush appear on their face.
Right.
Like there's no other excuse in so many contexts, even in this game, where you know that the only reason that this is here is that so someone can get a rise out of it. But if there are also times in Bayonetta specifically where I feel like they have built up enough of an excuse for themselves for these things to exist and be entertaining. And there's a lot of people, and you can just look online and see people who go, you know, I would want to be Bayonetta. Like, Bayonetta is not just like emotionless eye candy. She's also like an actually attractive person that people associate positive qualities with.
Right.
And I think that's generally kind of an accomplishment, despite the fact that those positive qualities were bound up in a nest that one person literally just selected because he wanted to be his perfect person.
Yeah, it is interesting like how the character comes off, like when you actually play the game compared to what you would think just by looking at the box.
Yeah.
And I think like an interesting comparison that I was thinking of is Nier Automata, where the main character, 2B, is supposed to be like a military general or something. Like in that first mission, you're like giving commands to this other like soldier, and like meanwhile she's essentially in like
She's
a French maid, sexy short dress. And when you climb ladders, you can move the camera to just look up her skirt.
That's kind of like a long-standing video game tradition.
It might as well tutorialize it and say, you're supposed to do this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's the same issue, and that's why when I created my character in Nier Automata, I titled it Sexy Robot Anime Girl, or whatever it is that I put.
Yeah, and it's like, it seems so blatant and in your face and weird in that game, and so much more at home and not nearly as like... It feels more appropriate in Bayonetta. I don't think it's like okay. Or like, just like, you know.
I'm going to push back on it a little bit because, especially in the opening hours of Bayonetta, I felt like it was very much in my face and very much not, like, well contextualized. It takes a long time before the characterization of Bayonetta begins lending a level of credence to the way that it works, and especially the amount of this game in the very early hours and in the very late hours that are tied up in cutscenes where the male gaze is played so hard that you can imagine Kamiya just operating the camera one-handed.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's I mean, it's just, like, it's not good cinematography. That isn't how I would characterize it. That isn't an excuse for it. Yeah, the best angle for this attack is probably, like, just directly inside of her vagina. Not generally, like, an often used one.
No.
And, like, that kind of a thing, and the outside, that's why I've been kind of skeeved out by it the entire time that I was playing it.
Yeah, see, for me, it was only ever in the cutscenes. Like, I felt like during the gameplay, like, the camera's never, like, swivels or is posed in a way for, like, me to... I felt like for me to like be looking at how hot Bayonetta is, like it kind of melts away, and I'm just playing a game.
You're like, thank God.
In the gameplay, but like in the cutscene, like the first cutscene, when she bursts out of the coffin and like it slices across like her boobs and her ass, and the clothes fly off.
Right.
And like, you know, it's so like over the top in the cutscenes, but then in the gameplay, it's like I totally like forget about it.
It's because we should be so thankful that it would be pretty much impossible to play a video game from those camera angles, because you know that he would have done that if possible.
Yeah,
if
he would have.
If it was possible at all. But no, pragmatic impossibility. I as sort of like a tangent and encapsulation of this, I thought back and forth at whether or not I wanted to ask you guys to read this thing that I found before as well, and I decided against it because I felt like I would rather knock have this discussion on the cast instead of try and show you guys information that would homogenize our opinions on stuff.
Right.
But I highly recommend that if anyone's sort of like interested in this sort of discussion about Bayonetta at all, the best thing that I ever found was a Gamma Sutra article from forever ago when the game first came out, written by a woman named Catherine Cross, that is like just head and shoulders above anything else that he's seen someone actually have when discussing like the sexualization of Bayonetta and the way that like she is sometimes portrayed as like this sort of pseudo-empowering character and other times clearly just a plaything for someone else's whim. Like we haven't even touched yet on the last thing that I joked to you guys about before I got here, which was that and this really left unfortunately a sour taste in my mouth at the end of this game that I really actually enjoyed a whole lot. Which was where they literally just use her and every other female character as like attractive character models that they can just manipulate into this fucking 5-minute long extended stripping scene among every location in the game.
Yeah, it's a source filmmaker post on Pornhub.
Yeah.
It's just like, it literally is just like they took the character models and made a shitty music video out of it.
Like, because there's no agency in that. There's no excuse for that to exist. It's not something that even as ridiculous as Bayonetta is that she would ever do. Like, all the stuff that she does that's sexualized, she does as, like, dramatic flair on top of other things that are her own goals and purposes. She doesn't just fucking sit there for 5 minutes and dance at a camera.
Right.
Not,
It's absurd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a good capstone, I think, is that final sequence. And not only that, like, the whole credits are playing over, like, her on a stripper pole. Mm-hmm. It's like, do I find Bayonetta objectionable? No, not particularly. I think that there are lots of things that are problematic about it. And even, like, the people that I've read who've given both sides of this argument, it does seem that once you've played the game, you get a better sense of it, but I think that because the percentage of people who were exposed to Bayonetta, particularly after her inclusion in Smash Brothers, versus the number of people who actually play the game, and not just play the game, but play it to about the midway point, where things start becoming, like, abundantly clear to you what they're going for, I think that the ideas that Bayonetta puts across, I think that the marketing, I think that the choice of box art and promotional material is problematic.
Oh yeah, the marketing was crazy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're aware of that. But the one that sticks out to me that I remember from Googling stuff is they had a Subway ad in Japan where they had her like...
Wait, an ad that is on the Subway?
Well, like a
Subway restaurant ad.
No, Bayonetta sold sandwiches after that whole... They were like, we had a problematic sexual spokesperson.
He was like, man,
before.
like Bayonetta would like footlongs of a certain kind.
Oh, yeah. Where is this... Oh my, why? We can't advertise our own podcast for shit. But Ant is apparently a marketing genius with the Bayonetta Subway footlong crossover that I think just needs to happen.
No.
Bayonetta 3, make it happen.
This was a literal subway station that had an ad plastered on the side that was like her laying down, covered in Post-it notes. And the idea was that you were supposed to come over and tear the Post-it notes off, and they were like other written ads.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a really effective marketing idea. I'll give it that.
Yeah. There's some crazy shit.
Yeah.
I think, at least for me, one of the more interesting takeaways that even all the discussions that I read on Bayonetta never addressed fully and directly, and certainly never put like a period on at the end of the discussion, was how we're going to start treating like purely fictionalized, completely agent-directed, like fictional characters, like actual model-designed video game characters in objectification discussions going on in the future. Because when we're talking about all of these things, we can say, like you did, Chad, that literally every feature of this person was designed.
Right.
It's not like you're casting a character in a movie where you're reducing a real, actual person into whatever this like fantasized conceptualization of women that you have is. That was often historically been a lot of the focus of the objectification debates in the literature, like all the stuff that like Daniel Dennett was having with like Martha Nussbaum and all the other sort of like pre-feminists that she sort of also elaborated on. That was all under the assumption that you were dealing with like actual human beings who were being reduced to this stuff. But now we have the ability to just create believable fictionalizations of people
with realistic animation and voice actors.
Yeah.
So
we can literally just like create the person who owns their sexuality, even when the person who created them is doing it purely for their own pleasure. And I don't know, like, the definitive answer to that question. I don't think I found anything that really just finalized this discussion about how we're supposed to treat circumstances like this going on in the future.
Right.
But it's super interesting, and I'm glad Bayonetta raised the issue.
That is probably the most positive spin on it that I could possibly have thought of. Yeah, I think honestly that's about as like we're not going to come up with the like definitive response to this on this podcast right now, particularly considering we do this with no like discussion. So like at no point during this are we going to like hit a breakthrough that we have written down.
But checks his notes.
No, I was like, oh, do I have like a definitive answer written down? Nope, just some comments about the map screen.
So are we getting back to real video games and not fucking feminist agenda, social justice?
Yeah, something like that. Just vomiting profusely.
Yeah.
I think. I think that this leads fair enough into the like narrative content of the game, but you guys will probably have to carry that one a little bit.
Will we?
I do have to at least end this with maybe one of my prime sources of confusion on the issue is that even this discussion sort of saying like within the context of the game things are pretty much fine. Outside the context of the game, pretty much not fine at all.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. But the in-game thing, the thing that kind of got me on this, and this all happens in the first cutscene, that's where almost all of my early notes come from. The game begins, first of all, the team behind Bayonetta is a team that is referred to as Team Little Devils.
Oh god, I forgot about that.
The game states, developed and distributed by your naughty friends at Platinum Games. And the game, in fact, opens with one of the main characters taking a leak on the grave of Hideki Kamiya himself. All sort of pushing it very close to the grindhouse territory that I think it would have been safe for them to go to, but also really putting a damper, literally in the case of pissing on somebody's grave, on like any conversation that doesn't that allows you to take it seriously at all. And that's kind of the reason I was never able to make the leap from just gross to not gross. It never happened. But the game does start with a funeral of, I guess, Dr. Robotnik, based on the way that they were talking about him and the fact that they referred to him as Eggman. And I think that's about the time I lost the plot. Like, I had no idea what was good. There was like a guy who kind of looked like Reggie Gigas, and I thought he was the main antagonist for a while, and then you kill him in like chapter 5.
Yeah.
And the game keeps going.
Yeah, the story itself is really not any good.
Okay.
No.
I really enjoyed like the setting and what I'll call the lore. Like I liked their portrayal of angels and how like they were creatures.
I agree.
Right.
That was really cool. And I liked a lot of the stuff where there would be missions where you would like go through one of those mirrors to like whatever other
Paradiso.
realm you were in.
Yeah.
Paradiso, and like everything would be like beautiful, like angelic fantasy landscape. And I'm like, all of this is great. Can we do more of this and less like little child and guy following me?
Yeah. That's And I was like, the Paradiso thing was a huge point for me because I thought that those areas just looked amazing.
Yeah, it looks great.
Because when you're in Inferno, it's fine. We've seen lava in games forever, literally forever, and but Paradiso is like such a striking visual design that I thought was really strong. And yeah, if we did more of that, oh, it'd be so good.
Yeah, I'm interested to play Bayonetta 2, just to see where they go with the story, because I feel like you have to lean more into that in a sequel, right? I hope so.
I don't know. It's not like Bayonetta has rules that they need to follow. There's no box that can possibly contain Bayonetta at this point.
Except for that one, right?
Having not read any actual criticism of this game, I have to imagine the message got to Platinum that they did a super good job at that particular environmental aspect of the game, and like a super okay expected normal job at the other areas.
Yeah.
So it's like, I imagine we're speculating on a game that came out 3 years ago. That's probably just something that we'll return to in the future.
Yeah, the story just gets like needlessly convoluted at the end, and it is dragged out in this like one note joke of the girl calling Bayonetta mom the whole time.
Yeah, it is one note enough to have made me just assume it was true.
Yeah, like, well, I actually, in classic Andy fashion, saw it coming that it just was Bayonetta, but as a child.
Yeah,
I also had that suspicion, but I also thought
they
maybe
just look too similar. But yeah, that character was like super cute and likable in like the first chapter she was in, but then she just stayed and said the same thing for the whole rest of the game.
Yeah, it is literally the entire. She only goes away in like the middle of chapter 15.
Yeah,
and then you have one chapter, and then she is like the reveal.
Yeah, I also liked the idea of Luca, but thought maybe like the implementation wasn't that great. Like the idea that like he's kind of like her damsel in distress is a cool idea, and he is kind of likable, but also like kind of overstays his welcome.
Yeah, he's like barely likable.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
He is edged over the line of just a non-person.
For no reason, he's got like a grappling hook.
Yeah, right? Like, they kept stepping him up. I was waiting for an endgame reveal where it shows that like he's like a Lumen Sage or something, because he kept getting out of circumstances that were so beyond like human capacity.
Was he like a detective or something?
Yes, he's just a detective.
Yeah.
That's all he is, like a normal PI.
Well, this is like how Frank West is a playable character in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So you can like have a fist fight between the Hulk and a photojournalist. Like, it's just like
they don't have like a justification for that.
Yeah, it's just like we're just gonna make it kind of work.
Injustice does.
Yeah, Injustice has a justification. MVC, no such thing. Yeah, Luca was. What I did expect to happen that didn't happen is what happens in every single Resident Evil game, where like during that last section where you think he's dead because he falls out the window. I thought that during the boss battle he was gonna like roll in the helicopter with like a rocket launcher.
That was like is exactly what would happen if it was Resident Evil.
I was like, that's a thing that's going to happen, and I'm fully expected to, and will not in any way accept any other outcome.
He shows up in like a spaceship and like helps you blast the god into the sun or whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whatever she was. Well, yeah. Only reason I don't think the reason I didn't call that happening in this game or didn't expect it to is because this game narratively had such an absolute consistent need to like never portray men as like anything other than like evil or complete lumps. Like it was so hilarious the way.
Rodin.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, he's also, I guess, a demon of some kind.
Oh yeah, evil. He's the evil side.
He's like
evil or
he's evil in the same way that Bayonetta is evil, though.
I don't know with Bayonetta, this comes off because we're talking about a narrative thing where I also have no fucking clue what was happening at any point in the story. She's supposed to be like half good, half evil, right?
Yeah, she's
not like literally a
merging
devil.
of light and dark.
Yeah, so I think it's like an open discussion about whether or not he is evil,
But
like
see,
she's evil.
It's not even, because there are two levels of light and dark in this game. There's the light of Paradiso, which is like heaven, actually. The dark of Inferno, which is like hell, actually, and where Rodin hangs out. And then above, in the human realm, there's the Umbra Witches and the Lumen Sages.
Yeah.
So they are actually not necessarily associated with one or the other, as far as I could tell. So like Bayonetta falls in like the perfect dead center area as like a child of that. Maybe not related to Paradiso or Inferno at all.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the white and black that this game puts everything on, I would say that Rodin and Bayonetta share the same like alignment. Lawful evil.
Well, this game doesn't really necessarily paint demons as evil.
Right.
So I feel like they both kind of exist in a gray area. Like in like Greek mythology, like just because Hades is like the lord of the underworld doesn't really make him evil.
Right. I think, and I think the way that they sort of the story.
I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah,
I don't think they really conveyed
Well,
that at all.
I think what they're going for is
maybe
more
a
that they're
little.
trying to skirt the issue entirely.
Yeah.
Because Bayonetta is, as I just said, lawful evil, probably not true, more chaotic evil. She's driven forward entirely by her own goals. And so the fate of like things like humans are not a concern in this game. Humans appear in this game as one guy with a grappling hook and translucent shadows that move around and are occasionally stumble if you bump into them.
And lose their cars very often.
Yeah, there are very few cars that survive this game. Or bridges.
Yeah. But I'm going to push back on the, like, whether or not all these entities are good or evil being an undertone thing. I think it's supposed to be conveyed by visuals. Like, even the angelic angel beasts that you're constantly fighting.
I mean, they're kind of portrayed as evil.
Not
almost.
just that, but like if you hit them hard enough, they will break away into horrible flesh monsters underneath of them.
Yeah.
Like there's no person in this whole game where if you don't fight far enough will eventually expose some kind of demonic flesh monster.
Yeah.
Except for maybe Luca.
I'm really
The flesh monster is just his insides. Though.
Yeah.
I'm really into that whole aesthetic touch. Like the idea of taking something that's supposed to be like holy and like revealing that it is like actually like corrupt and terrible.
Yep, right.
Is always like a really effective.
Well, this game, it traffics in that exact thing. The whole game is just supposed to be transgressive, and it works in the way that I think that it's supposed to work, like a grindhouse movie.
Yeah.
And that aesthetic plays into it. I would like to note at this point, this was my goat milk in Legend of Zelda moment where I was like, this probably won't come up. So I noted that all of the, like most of the angels, I guess not all, have an upside down head. And like in Christianity, the idea of like an upside down cross is the symbol for the Antichrist. And so I was thinking like, oh, maybe this is like that last fact, by the way, I kind of made up. That's what horror movies taught me.
Oh, okay.
I don't actually know that much about like Christian beliefs. So I was thinking maybe this is like some kind of symbolism where these aren't like actually angels. They're just like portraying angels. And I looked it up, and either that's just not true, or literally no one ever thought about it because it is not mentioned on the internet at all. And that is so. I think just no imagery in this game means anything.
I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think you're kind of onto something. The way I read it is that they want to paint it as like angels and demons are not like how you perceive them.
Right.
Like angels are not all good. There are like ones with like evil agendas, and demons are not all bad.
Yeah. Thank God
I think
demons,
it's what they're going for.
Like, thank God demons in this setting have the, like, they can only be channeled through hair restriction.
Yeah.
Because whenever they exist, they just seem to be, like, murder creatures.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice of them that the demons can't also go murder creature stuff.
Most of the angels look as though, like, if they were not attacking you, they could be considered, like, some sort of, like, awe-inspiring thing.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas all the demons are, like, a snake, a dragon, a spider. Like, it's just a menagerie of threatening animals.
Yeah. And even the angelic creatures are willing to, like, sit down and just, like, have a conversation with people. And then Bayonetta is
Well,
Bayonetta
shoot them
and
in the
shoot
face,
them,
yeah.
and then continues to attempt to murder them. So it's not even clear whether, like, they're also murder creatures entirely. Clearly their goals also don't care about humans, like nothing in this
They
game
are
does.
all
Right.
armed very heavily.
They
That's
are.
true.
Dragon arms at times. But to get back to your original goat milk question,
Yes.
my reading of this, and I actually thought about this like relatively halfway through, and I can't believe this came out. It was like a 1 second thing for me. Well, like why all the faces are upside down, or so many, not literally all. I thought that what they were going for was that the sky was their floor.
So they're, like, peeking down?
No, you know, like,
I thought about this as well. Like, because they're from heaven, they would be upside down on Earth.
Yes.
But then I was like, I'm imagining, like, that only works if they're, like, really tall. And you can only see, like, from their chest down through the atmosphere. But then I also realized that heaven is, within modern religion and also within the game itself, portrayed as being like an alternate dimension entirely. So even that makes no sense.
I don't think it's clear. I think heaven as an alternate dimension thing only came into existence after space travel became a thing, I think.
Well, that's what I mean. When
Someone
I say
correct
modern,
me if I'm wrong about this, because it seems like a thing that could be a bullshit fact.
Right.
But
well, because obviously in this game, heaven is not just way up there.
yeah.
Like that's pretty clearly ascribed to the Paradiso realm in this game.
We went up there. There was like Neptune and shit.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
So like the peeking from the atmosphere trick doesn't work, unfortunately.
This is true.
I know that we both noted the upside down faces though.
Yeah. It was a weird
Somebody
decision.
has to.
One thing narratively, did you guys check to make sure that there weren't like secret endings to this game? Because I did not. I just drove here.
Did not even think about it.
Unfortunately, Sam, I didn't think to do it.
Shit. Because I had something really cool that I noticed on the second to last chapter that I thought was like a hint for the coming like final boss conflict.
Right.
That the game, in my playthrough, literally never touched on ever.
Okay.
Which is Bayonetta's shadow, which you normally can't see,
Has wings.
has more than wings. She is like a
has
crazy
wings.
butterfly demon. I caught this when I was walking up one of the walls, and there was like a platform at a 90 degrees, so it just like displayed it fully. I was like, oh man, that's going to be her secret ultimate form that comes off in the battle. Literally never touched ever.
Right.
Yeah. So I have no idea what that means, but it looks cool.
It does look very cool, and yeah, it's never really touched on, other than the fact that like butterflies are like a thing. Except if you buy the bat within, butterflies stop being a thing, except when you double jump, because normally that's when you trigger Witch Time, the butterflies come out. With bat within, bats come out instead. So the butterfly imagery drops off from pretty minimal to almost non-existent.
Oh, that's only true if you're a shit person, and only Witch Time when you get hit, because that's what makes the bat thing so cool. What bat is if you dodge like immediately at the same time that you take damage, like a little rose pops up on the screen, I think, as like the window for when you can bat. Then the damage gets negated and you bat instead of butterfly.
Okay.
But
I think I was just not paying attention to the butterfly particle effects ever, and just assumed that it was a replacement.
But yeah, that was also a cool bit of sort of like, not really lore, but like design that they added in visually. I like that they associated the witches with wild animals and creatures in contrast to sort of like modernity and like holy chapels and like lawfulness of all the like good aligned entities.
Right.
It really ties into the kind of like witchiness that they were getting to, where historically witches are always like people off in the forests because you force them to leave town.
Old hags.
Yeah.
And people who were drowned erroneously.
Yeah. It was a cool way to tie that in, like the hair thing, into like classical depictions of witches in a way that was cool.
Yeah.
Because shapeshifters are cool, and they were cool in this game.
I have 2 more things total, so
All right,
feel free to.
let loose your things.
All right. My one thing I think is maybe dumb, but might lead to a thing.
Mhm.
I think that when they were making this game, they said, you know what Devil May Cry had? Areas that you walked around in and platforming puzzles. And I think they just said, okay, we should put that in our game, and then left it at that. Because all of those sections are terrible and should probably just not be in the game at all. Platforming puzzles in games like this, while just miserably bad in Devil May Cry 1 because of the fixed camera perspective, and not quite as bad in Bayonetta where you can look where you're jumping. Just in this game, your movement's too weird to like accurately predict where you're gonna land.
Yeah.
And then walking around feels like totally alien to me playing this game. Because most of the time, you're in an attack. Say like 80% of the game, you're doing an attack. There are moments in this game where you just like walk down a road. And it's like, why is this here? It's like just filler. It doesn't, there's secrets. But those were more or less unnecessary for the large part.
I'll agree that the platforming bits feel out of place, because like her jump physics when you're not like fighting things are super weird.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, their jump physics are totally based only around combat.
Yeah. But
super vertical, almost no horizontal.
I'm
Fast
actually
drop.
a big fan of like the like walk around and explore an area kind of thing. Like I feel like there was an area like that at the very beginning, and like very few after that in my memory.
Yeah, the train station one.
Yeah.
It takes a little
So,
while.
I actually kind of wish there was a bit more of that personally, because I just like that kind of thing. Like it lets you stew in the world a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
So if they could, that would have required they actually put more of the budget and time into fleshing out the world.
Right.
So it's probably a good call that they got rid of it mostly in this game, but.
I'm willing to withdraw it as a like definitive criticism if it's there for someone. I just didn't really foresee that. It's definitely not for me.
I mean, I think it's also there so everyone can breathe. Like, they had to have something in this game
some kind of pacing.
that was not, like, tensed, muscled action.
I guess.
Like, they weren't going for the same kind of feeling that something like Hotline Miami was, where the like density of the crazy shit that you do and the density of the pauses are like so distinct that everything that you just sort of have one breathe out moment. In this game, they're going for a more traditional level structure where you have different segments of conflict and you have to differentiate those segments with something. You can't make it a row. You can't make them in a row where everything would just feel like an arena fight. And so instead of taking the budget time to develop what that would be, they did the same thing that all other 3D games, like historically when this game came out and before it often did, which was just make the area and then just let them walk between them at their own pace. I agreed, especially with Andy, that there were lots of situations in which I felt like that walking was good, not just as a breather, but as a way for you to look around at the shit that was happening. Towards the end of the game, I really liked them a lot when you're like walking around through those like crazy like halo rings at different points, because those are literally just walking segments for the most part. There's a couple where you're doing with like platforms and stuff and has those platforming problems where I agree with the room. They're pretty much shit. But the only time they got really offensive to me was the only time I felt like they were actually a challenge, which was like that last bit in the tower where they like vanish rapidly.
That was lame.
Yeah.
Well, I know you didn't, but did you get Crow Within?
Oh Oh, the fly one? You
Yeah.
can just fucking cheat, can't you? You can just fly all the way
Yeah,
up.
I never jumped between any of those. I
God.
just flew right over.
Oh,
So, yeah, I was pretty stingy with my Halo, so I
Yeah.
didn't get a lot of the upgrades.
I spent like
I got all the
30
key
minutes.
ones,
I
and then a
only
couple others.
I actually did not. This is where we go back to that apology I made at the beginning about being bad at this game. I didn't buy a single accessory in the whole game.
Me neither.
I only bought techniques, and I bought all the techniques. And it was helpful. There were a couple that I know I didn't use because their execution was like awkward as fuck.
Yeah.
Like there were a few moves that were like, execute this by pressing forward on the joystick twice while holding right bumper and pressing Y. I'm like, that will never occur to me to do in the middle of a fight.
Yeah.
But like the crow one was like a godsend by the end of the like actual game because I was like, fuck these.
Yeah, I'm extremely jealous of your ability to skip those jumpy segments.
But yeah, I think a version of this game that leaned more heavily into like the angels and demons and sages and witches conflict and gave me more like cool angelic landscapes to walk around and explore, find some LPs or whatever, just explore and find stuff
Yeah.
as a breather, like for the pacing that would be like ideal, at least in my mind anyway.
Lord knows European towns and caves were not like interesting eye candy in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about Assassin's Creed 2 not too long ago. Not Assassin's Creed too long ago. Like, that was a game that took an Italian city and made it, like, visually attractive, like a thing to behold.
Yeah.
This game uses it just to, like, bounce a body off of so that you can keep kicking it.
Yeah, it wants you to get out of that setting as quick as possible and into the weird stuff.
Yeah. But then it brings you back for, for budget reasons.
They didn't like get to capitalize on it. I think like they probably wanted to.
Yeah, hearing that explained makes me realize that I was maybe being a little bit unreasonable, just wanting every game to be Doom 2016. I think is what the problem is.
Yeah.
I just like want more arena fights, but this is walking. So I'm curious because I think this is my overall sort of negative opinion sort of floating in. So hopefully this can serve as a like a positive outro and just sort of a general discussion on the game. Did you guys have like a high point? Like something that like really stood out to you?
The last fight with Carmen Sandiego.
What?
Carmen Sandiego.
Jean.
Oh, with her.
Yeah.
I didn't. Oh, because she's wearing red.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And is like is fashionable. And,
Okay.
like sexually attractive.
Carmen Sandiego, 10 out of 10.
10 out of-
Would bang.
Yeah, totally. That's why you're looking for her.
Uh-huh.
A woman who's never
You,
there.
you need to know where in the world she is so you can get to it.
Okay. Well, I hated that fight pretty bad. I just wasn't even going to talk about that, but now that you mention it, there's like quick time events to evade the missiles that like smacked her in the face.
Uh-huh.
I hit one of those ever.
Uh-huh.
Why is the window for that so small?
I don't know. It was really uncharacteristically small for this
really,
game.
really small. I missed so many times and died, and like that was where most of my failures in that mission came from.
Yeah. Ending was also a high point for me, but not specifically that fight, but like more of like the last like chunk of boss fights.
Yeah.
I thought were all great. And for me, this game had like a really steep difficulty curve, like where I was just like sucking ass for like the first like third. And like once the game clicked for me, it was pretty much high points all the way to the end, with the exception of like the motorcycle and missile riding things.
Yeah.
Like the goofy little one-off parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, like once it clicked, I think this game just felt great to me.
Yeah, this is a game that rewards your mastery pretty well.
Well, I was far from mastery.
Right.
But, mastery of normal mode.
Yeah. That's so when I took this note originally, before I thought of it as like a thing to put at the end of the podcast, talking about why the game actually does work as a game. It was originally a pretty harsh criticism because I didn't feel as though this game had any high points for me. Like, I thought that even the parts I thought were good were all sort of like, middle of the road. Like, it was a combat encounter I thought was particularly satisfying, but not really memorable. Like, it's just you fighting something, and it was a fun time. And I felt that it had really steep low moments. I thought that the opening cutscene, I thought that the big cherub babies who are all over the place were a really low point in that fucking motorcycle section. But then, after beating the game, reflecting on it a little bit, that, first of all, my high point is the final boss. I think Jubileus is incredible. The only, like, nitpick is the fucking black hole attack that kills you in one hit. Turns out you can crow over that and it won't kill you.
Didn't have crow. What do you mean kills you? How does it kill you?
Not the one that turns you into a child.
Oh, I didn't think I ever even encountered a different black hole attack.
Yeah,
You totally did.
Yeah, well,
I don't remember.
It is
There's no
RNG.
way you didn't.
The time that I beat it,
It happened to me so many times. I can't believe that it just didn't happen at all.
Did it suck you? Did it suck you backward?
It appeared in the middle and it like just sucked you into it. And if it got you all the way to the center, you just die.
Okay.
Yeah.
It happened to me one time and I never got hit by it.
Wow.
yeah, the time that I beat it, only happened.
I mean,
once.
like it was only a problem the first time it happened, and then
Right.
I knew how to avoid it. So
I got sucked in a couple of times after knowing because I didn't know what the prompt was. Because it's when she puts all.
It
of her...
has a pretty obvious tell.
Yeah, and I didn't pick up on it the first time because I just died.
You just jaguar, and then it won't be able to suck you in.
Yeah.
Or panther, or whatever the fuck it is.
Dude, whatever it is, I'm super happy that it is that and not like a regular ass like cheetah cat. Like I'm really happy that the like animal that you turn into that's a running animal.
Cheetah too regular.
No. Like regular.
Like a stereotypical fast animal.
Oh yeah, like stereotypical
Like a
animal
cheetah.
for a girl to turn into in a Japanese game. There is a stereotype where like
Cheetah?
I don't
Is
know,
one of
whatever.
them?
Like a cat that has like normal triangular ears, like a normal like cat of prey. I'm doing a bad job differentiating this. I remember seeing when this jaguar came out, I was like, oh, it's a way more like powerful, cool animal for her to be.
Okay.
Instead of like this normal generic cat that it seems like all women who shapeshift into cats shapeshift into.
Also, she's a witch, so you'd expect her to turn into a black cat. And
right.
so you kind of have to either go with a jaguar or a
panther.
panther.
Yeah.
It's really your only options there.
They were it was like muscular and cool.
I agree. I also like the inclusion of the feature because it allows you to run through the walking segments without like, stopping to smell the roses. So that was good. I didn't like how many times I accidentally triggered it while panic dodging.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just I should stop panic dodging.
Yep. Yeah.
I learned how to like use that to my advantage and like chain it into combos and stuff.
Right. Anyway, but that boss, real good. Thank you. That was my high point. And I think overall, my opinion on the game is a little bit higher than I had initially thought it was going to be. Yeah.
The design of Jubileus, just because I don't feel like I can allow that boss to come up this many times without commenting on it, they worked so hard, not just on her like visual design, but on the progression of her design through the fight, like the way that she like breaks up like a terracotta warrior or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's so great to look at, and the way that they position the camera not only accents her like crazy the universal size, but also allows her, despite her size, to be completely on screen, so you can always see all of her and always see the way that she's degrading like that. I just thought that was just a really beautiful way to do the character, and I was a huge fan of how that looked.
Also, generally, just being able to see the whole boss is a good thing, and that this game does really well. There are very few times, with the exception of actually my favorite regular boss being that dragon guy, where occasionally you'll find yourself on the ground. It doesn't really do much.
Yeah.
Like, it actually accounts for the fact that you can't see him, which is a rarity, I guess. Like, a lot of times things are programmed to just do what they do, and if you aren't looking at it, you get fucked by it. But this game really accounts for that and tries to put everything in sort of a cinematic style.
Yeah. And it works on that without compromising usability for the most part, which is a success.
Yeah, the like giant monster like boss battles are like where all the positive elements of this game I think really come together.
Yeah.
In like a complete package where like everything is just like working for it.
Thank you for listening to NoClip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Square Enix's hip-hop RPG, The World Ends With You, which I've been assured contains hip-hop because I haven't played it. This is just what I've been told. Am I cool yet, guys?
No.
Well, if you want to get a hold of us, though despite me being not cool, you can do so at noclippodcast.com. You can find our email address, our Twitter. Go to YouTube, go ahead and type in NoClip Podcast. You'll find our channel. And if you aren't already, listen to us on iTunes or on Google Play. Leave us a rating and a review.
Yeah. Tell us exactly how cool or uncool you believe us to be.
Don't represent that in your star rating, though. Just give it a 5.
Yeah.
It's fun to get that, because we're definitely not cool.
Yeah.
We get so, like, I love the podcast, but 1 star, not cool.
Yeah, drop us that 5-star rating and then just rip on us relentlessly in the comments.
You will be the first person to leave us a review with words, and we will read it, you ripping into us on air.
We will. Try not to pick things up off of or put things down on the table.